Hey everybody, let's talk about getting offended. Many of us find ourselves spending extra time these days, basically all of our time for some of us, around people who love us and we love them, but wow, do we find ourselves some days being easily offended by them. So someone says something we find hurtful, and that feeling of being offended leads to reacting, maybe lashing out and offending the offender, and now you're in an argument. Or maybe you end up retreating and shutting out the other person while you carry in your body that pit of anger in your stomach or anxiety in your chest, wherever it comes for you. Maybe you've been there even today. What if I said there is a part of you that can't be offended? And what if it were possible to spend more of your time living from that part of you and less time being reactive, hurt, fleeing, fighting? A big part of the work I do as a spiritual life coach is to help people discover how they can apply their spirituality, however they define that, to their daily lives. And this experience of being offended is one of those areas where I believe leaning into the fact that you and I are spiritual beings can impact our lives. I think the part of us that does get offended is what some people have called our false self, or in psychological language, you might say our ego. I'm drawing here on language and ideas from, among many others, Richard Rohr, who's one of my heroes when it comes to this kind of thing. And the language isn't meant to imply that this false self is a bad thing. It's actually how you and I have learned to get by in the world. The false self, or the ego, is basically the story we've told ourselves and told other people about who we are. And we've been constructing this from early on in life. I'm a good girl who follows the rules, or I'm a creative free spirit, or I'm a kind person, or I'm good at sports, or I'm a mother, or I'm a son, or I'm a Republican, or a Democrat, or a bartender, or an accountant. And the combination of all those things ends up being the foundation for how we think about our identity a lot of the time. And that's all well and good and can work for us, and it does. But then your partner or your parent or your friend says something that strikes a blow at a part of your identity. I think I'm a creative free spirit, but now you just implied you don't think I'm all that original. And when that's said, if I'm really finding my identity in that false self, I'm receiving that as an attack on my very being. If I'm not creative and original, who am I? And who are you to say that I'm not? Right? And now we're into it, and I am offended. So what's this part of ourselves that can't be offended? I spend a lot of time hoping, dreaming, sometimes believing that you and I, along with our false selves that tend to define us, also have a true self. And this true self isn't based on behaviors, roles, character traits. It's the part of us that just is. My true self is the part of me that doesn't have to prove anything to anyone because it proves its worth just by being. It's a gift from its source, and it's connected to its source. Some traditions would say it's the part of us that reflects that we're created in the image of God. It's the divine living in us, the spirit moving in us. When I'm living from my true self, I can't be offended because I'm not relying on anything for my identity that is offendable. You can't tell me I don't exist. I'm here. And that means that a loving source or God or universe has deemed me worthy of being here. And I'm receiving that gift of love, and I'm sharing it with you because I have plenty. That's a whole different way of living, right? And it sounds pretty good to me, and maybe it does to you, but maybe you're also like me in feeling like it sounds way too far from your normal mode of being to be at all realistic. You can ask my partner, Sarah, how often I'm living from that unoffendable place, and we'll both agree that it's not nearly as much as either of us would want. But I've been learning tools and rhythms and practices that nurture and cultivate my ability to access my true self, to identify with my true self, and to forgive myself for all the times that I'm not living from my true self. And every once in a while, there's an interaction that happens where I realize that a year ago or 6 months ago or a week ago, I might have been unnecessarily offended in that interaction. And because of the spiritual work I've been doing, and because I'm learning where my inherent worth comes from, I wasn't offended this time. and that interaction went better, and I'm growing, and there's a tiny bit more peace and love in the world because of it. In a world that we can all see operates too much from that cycle of offense and being offended and offending some more, for one moment, I didn't contribute to that cycle. And that kind of journey to break that cycle in ourselves and in the world is a slow but incredibly fulfilling path. If you can find some time, and I know it might be hard to find some space and some quiet in these challenging days, but if you can take a moment, maybe right after watching this video, to get quiet and look within yourself, I think you might find that journey of discovering your true self is the one you've already been on, whether you knew it or not, and that your soul is really desiring to take the next steps on that path. I'd be honored to walk with you on that journey, to help you find tools, practices, rhythms for that path. It's what I love to do. And I'd love to hear from you, whether it's in the comments or through my website or my Facebook page, about what you're finding helpful in that quest of living from your true, unoffendable self. What have you found? Always feel free to reach out to me, and I can't wait to hear stories of how you've begun to break the cycle of offense in your life, in your family, in your world. Love and peace to you, my friend.